Hey, I'm Allison Hare, a former corporate executive turned coach and keynote speaker for women making big moves. And I am on a mission. I'm on a mission to help you and me create more freedom, more space, more fulfillment in our overscheduled lives. Welcome to the Late Learner Podcast, where here we are breaking all of the outdated norms. You know, the ones that we are all taught to live in. And we find way more modern ways to live life better. So what are we late learning today? Well, today we're talking about something I generally never want to talk about on this podcast, and that is money. And not because I don't love it, but maybe like some of you, I have a really fraught relationship with money that has nothing to do with how much I have in the bank. And I always feel like I should understand it better. It feels kind of like Greek to me. I should have saved more. I should have invested more. I should have spent less. I should have appropriated it differently. And when people start talking about capital or crypto or whatever it is, I am checked all the way out because I really hate feeling dumb. And when my mom was alive, she kind of had this scarcity mindset. She was a baby boomer. When she had any amount of money, she would spend it as quickly as possible because she was afraid she would never have money again. And I feel like I have adopted that too. So recently, I discovered Dr. Brad Klontz. When he started talking about, I was listening, I found him on a podcast. It was on Hidden Brain, I think. And he started talking about money scripts and how it's been programmed into our psyche and how we get out of it. And I was so blown away that I had never heard it taught in a way that felt really compassionate and empathetic, but it had a totally different mindset than anything I've ever heard before. So I hunted him down like a Swiftie stan that gets word that Taylor Swift is at the local donut shop. And I asked him to be on my podcast. So Bradley Klontz is an expert in financial psychology, financial planning, and applied behavioral finance. He has co-authored 8 books on the psychology of money, including his latest book, Start Thinking Rich, 21 Harsh Truths to Take You from Broke to Financial Freedom, co-written with Adrian Brambilla, which comes out on October 28th and is available for pre-order now if you're getting this before the 28th. So what I want you to do is I want you to send this to one person right now who is either really into financial stuff or really scared of it. I can't wait to get this empowering new approach out into the world. But before we jump in, do you get my weekly newsletter, Reinvention Roadmap? It is a completely free way to go one-on-one with me. Every week, I send you relatable insights, brave strategies, and action steps to your next best chapter. And it always ends with a fun little twist. Go to AllisonHare.com/email. And also, if you want help taking that first step in seeing your goals all the way through, if you want more one-on-one support with me, and also as you're thinking about, we only have like 2 months left in the year, how do you set up for 2025? So if you are considering a big life change, I would encourage you to schedule a free strategy session with me to see, does it make sense for us to maybe work together to help you have a 3-month outcome-driven engagement to make that dream or those ideas that are kind of formed in your head, but they're not quite clarified. And you would love a strategy, an execution plan, accountability, and get those results that you want. Schedule a time with me. Go to AllisonHare.com/schedule. All right, let's get to our chat with Dr. Brad Klontz. Okay, we are here with Dr. Brad Klontz. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited you could be here.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here too.
Yeah, so you're about to release with your co-author, Adrian Brambilla, a book called Start Thinking Rich, right? 21 Harsh Truths to Take You from Broke to Financial Freedom. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I have to say that I was resistant to ever talk about money on this podcast because I have my own stories about it. And I heard you on another podcast, something illuminated, and I was like, boom, this is exactly what I need. So I imagine that if you're listening to this podcast and you're wondering, do I really need to listen to this? Or am I going to feel ashamed and embarrassed? That is not the point of this. We are reframing the discussion. So Dr. Brad, can you tell me a little bit about your journey from broke to wealthy? And your partner, Adrian Brambilas, are so different. Would you mind sharing? Because I think what was so fascinating is how you literally can change generational wealth in one generation. You can do this in your lifetime. Can you share your story about how you did it?
Yeah. So, first of all, I just really want to resonate with what you were saying around and what I heard was shame. Like we all feel shame around money. It's a really fascinating thing when you dive into psychology. So the founder of psychology was Sigmund Freud, and he very early on connected money in people's dreams to feeling shame and embarrassment and this like dirty thing that we shouldn't talk about or engage with. And so I find it really fascinating that the people who I find to be sort of the more spiritually evolved, or people who are trying to pursue a passion that helps others, are the ones who tend to be sort of the most money avoidant, and they don't really want to think about it. And unfortunately, that avoidance hurts them. And quite frankly, it hurts their ability to actually help others. And so it's one of the key messages that is really important to me is that your craziest, most self-destructive, ridiculous behaviors around money make perfect sense if you understand your psychology around money and where you got it. And for most of us, and so to my story, I grew up lower income. My parents divorced when I was 2. My mom was single for a while. We had to bring renters into the house to make ends meet. And I grew up in that environment. There's a lot of people who grew up in that environment. And the first chapter of our book is called "Being Poor Sucks." And I lived that experience, and it does suck, and it's not a good emotional experience. And for people who grow up in poverty, it can be downright traumatic. Like it's just constant traumas over and over and over because you're vulnerable, you're not safe, you don't have that sense of security. And so at a very young age, I was really curious around, like, why are we poor? Like, why are both my grandparents in trailer parks? Meanwhile, some branches of my family have been in the United States since the Mayflower. So it's like, what's going on here? I was really curious about that. And I remember being exposed early on to friends of mine whose parents seemed rich to me. In retrospect, they were like middle class. And just trying to pick their brain, like, how did you make more money? Because from my perspective, my family was hardworking, good people, generous people. And it's sort of like, well, this isn't fair. Like, why are we here when others aren't? And so I got very interested in psychology for a few reasons. One was to try to figure out why my parents got a divorce, because I did not want to repeat that pattern in my life if I had kids someday. So that was one of the things that drew me there. And then another one was trying to figure out, like, how do people become successful? Because I know it's not who they are as a person, because there's a lot of really great, hardworking people out there who are not financially successful. And so I got really curious about the mindset related to it. And I've just made tons of mistakes along the way, by the way. So I'm here to make you feel really good about yourself from all my like terrible financial behaviors, because it really did take me a while to sort it out, because I had all these patterns in my brain that I inherited from my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. And I'm just trying to make sense of it all here. And I'm just trying to live my life, and I'm trying to better my life. Meanwhile, I'm tripping up and I'm making mistakes, and I'm embarrassed by some of those mistakes. But it really did make sense for me when I started to dig into my family history, exactly why I was doing what I was doing.
I think what would be a good idea is to talk about something that is kind of the foundational principles of your work, which is the 4 types of money scripts. And I actually took a quiz on your website, and apparently I am money focused. I'm high on money focus. Can you break down those? Because I think understanding, like helping, even a listener identify, oh yeah, that's kind of me. I think kind of giving us a framework will help us with our conversation today.
Yeah. By the way, I'm super curious what your other highest score was. because quite often people will
It
have
was money
two.
vigilance.
Okay, yeah.
Money
So by the
vigilance.
way, you and I share the same psychology around money, just so you know.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So what I got really interested in is why would a reasonably intelligent person do something so stupid with his money, which was me. After I lost all my money day trading, thinking this is what rich people do, and I was doing that not to get rich, but to try to pay off my student loan debt. And I was just sort of racked with like shame and guilt and remorse and all this. Well, luckily, being a psychologist, I immediately blamed myself, and actually blamed my mother. That's what we'd like to do in psychology, is like
Yeah.
blame our mothers for everything. But I literally went home and I started to interview my parents because I just knew based on every other experience in my life as a psychologist that my family has had an impact on my beliefs around money. And so I interviewed my mother. And all of a sudden, I found all these stories from her upbringing around money and her growing up poor and feeling ashamed and embarrassed. And my grandfather losing all his money in the Great Depression, never trusting the banks, never put $1 in the bank the rest of his life. And I started to notice these patterns of beliefs, like my grandpa's belief, his money script was you can't trust banks with your money. And he got that belief after he lost all his money in the bank, which is a logical conclusion, right?
Right.
But all of a sudden it made sense to me. Well, it's like, no wonder he died in his 90s. Get this, never put $1 in the bank. Like he never had a bank account ever again. And that became dysfunctional though. Like it was accurate in that period of time, but then he passed down that fear to my mother, and my mom was so afraid, would never invest anything. She'd put money in the bank, but wouldn't invest it. And then I come along and I'm like, I don't want to be poor like these people. And so then I swing to the opposite side of the extreme, and I'm not investing, I'm speculating. I'm taking all my money and I'm rolling the dice. And if it wasn't sort of examining myself, I'm sure I would have gone right back to my grandfather's belief. Like, it's so crazy. Like, you can't trust investments, markets, they're a big scam. And so I was aware of these beliefs around money. And in working with other people, I started to work with other people in this area as I'm sorting myself out, because frankly, psychology had ignored the entire topic. So nobody really knew who to talk to about this. And so as part of that, I started to notice other people's beliefs around money and link it to their parents and grandparents. And it's like, wow, some of these are great and some are terrible in terms of your financial health. So we started to study this. So at this point, we have studied probably close to 100,000 people, their beliefs around money. And we found 4 different patterns, which is what you talked about. The first pattern is we call money avoidance. This is where you believe rich people are bad. Money, it corrupts people. There's virtue in having less money. So you have this negative association with money. Now, what's so interesting about this, like all money scripts, there's elements of truth in all of that. Like there are certainly terrible rich people out there. But it's only part of the truth, because there are rich people. And by the way, I hope all our listeners here become very wealthy and do great things in the world, right? So there is that element of truth too. The second category we found is what we call money focus, which is what you and I are sort of elevated on. And this is the belief that more money is going to make you happier. It's going to solve all your problems. Like, I'm depressed now, but if I just had financial freedom, then all my problems will melt away. I'll finally have meaning in life. Everything will be solved. And the problem with this belief is that that's not quite how it works. You're always going to have those existential issues around meaning in life and what's important. And people will attach this to stuff too. So this is sort of the average American. It's like, well, if I buy this thing or that thing, I'm going to feel better. I'm finally going to feel fulfilled. The third category we found is we called money status. And this is where we're linking our self-worth with our net worth. If you asked me how much I made, I'd tell you I make more than I do. I'm not going to buy something unless it's new. These are the keeping up with the Joneses mindset. This is what Instagram is full of. You get on there and you just start to feel deprived immediately because people are flashing all their bling.
Right.
And it's associated with terrible financial outcomes and lower income and lower net worth, which is really, really important as I talk about this fourth category. So the fourth category is also an elevation for you and I, which is good. And it's important to save for a rainy day. We call it money vigilance. I'd be a nervous wreck if I didn't have money saved for an emergency. Money should be saved, not spent. You can tell it's sort of an extreme view too here. Yeah. So you got to watch out. And then get this though, if someone asks me how much I made, I tell them I make less than I do. So the irony is these people have the highest net worth, the highest income, the lowest credit card debt, the best financial health. They're actually kind of downplaying what they have. And so if you take nothing else from this conversation, the next time you're feeling really bad about yourself on Instagram, just know that the people who are flashing the bling, more likely to have lower net worth. And it makes sense. They're focused on buying stuff. Right.
Yeah. This is so crazy to me because I'm thinking about my season in life, right? And just for your benefit, Dr. Brad, and anybody who's listening, my background is that I spent 23 years in corporate technology sales, did exactly what I was supposed to do, saved 401k, made a great living. 2 years ago, I walked out on purpose without a plan. I don't recommend this approach. I was just profoundly burned out and realized I needed to be doing something differently. And what I've started to notice, not only through my journey and kind of documenting my journey on this podcast and through my blog, but with the people that I work with and connect with and people that listen, there are so many of us, especially women, that have been taught that your productivity or your worth is based on your income, is based on what you can produce, and your productivity and your value is based on that. So at this stage, there's a lot of unlearning that goes to that. And there's so much in American society that worships money, that worships like it almost is like the halo effect that if you are rich, then you are great at everything. You're probably a good human too. So I'd love to understand your perspective on the pop culture lens and also like the value piece of, what your net worth is equals your value or your ability to earn.
Yeah, it's that money status set of beliefs that is what you're talking about from my perspective. And what's so fascinating about it too is the people who are most vulnerable to those beliefs are people who grow up in lower income, frankly. And it's like, how do you know if somebody is high income? You got to think about that too. Like, how would you even know? Like, people don't
Yeah.
usually go around showing their pay stubs and all of that, or talking about this. And the bottom line is, you don't. And people are having a tendency to show this off. They want to show people that they have status, they're important. And I think it's a really interesting psychology around that, because to tell people that they shouldn't care about what other people think is just bogus advice. Like, we are not wired to do that as human beings. We're actually wired to care very deeply about how others perceive us, which is actually really important. Otherwise, you'll have no friends because you'll be a jerk. Um, you need to be tuned in to other people's experience of you. And this is actually how we've survived and thrived for 99.9% of our time on Earth. Small hunter-gatherer tribes where we're very closely linked and paying very close attention to rumors and what's being said about us. And it's really necessary for our survival. So the thing is, though, that we will surround ourselves with people who tend to share similar values. And so it's real easy to feel bad about yourself if you're hanging around a group of people who are big spenders and you're not a big spender. What you don't know is how much credit card debt do they have. You don't know if they were born into money and they're gradually melting it all away. You don't know that. You don't know where they are on their journey, and they're not very likely to tell you. You could also surround yourself with a group of people who are bragging about how much money they saved. And there's an entire movement out there. It's called the FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And it's so funny because I was hanging out with some of these people a couple weeks ago, and they like to sit around and talk about who's got the lowest cost insurance. They like to talk about what percentage of their income are they saving and investing. And so I find it so fascinating because, by the way, they very much care about what other people think. And when somebody says, "Oh, I'm investing 50% of my income," they're like, "Dang, I'm only doing 40." They feel like they're missing out. And so then they're sort of striving to save or invest more. My best advice is, and we talk about it in the book too, we talk about rich mindset versus poor mindset, is if you want to improve your financial life, you're going to need to avoid people who have a poor mindset, who are focused on spending. And by the way, some of these people are six-figure income earners, but they're focused on what they're going to buy next to make themselves feel good and to get accolades from other people. And try to surround yourself with people who have more of a rich mindset, who recognize what it takes to grow their wealth, which is, frankly, being frugal and saving and investing and not doing anything stupid, and make that your reference group.
This is so profound because I think that some of the truths that you share in your book are like a slap in the face, right? But then, when you kind of unpack it, it's more like a warm hug. So what does that look like in real life in terms of realigning your friendships and realizing, wait a minute, I don't know that this is aligned. And there are some people, like there's some people they're immediately coming to my mind where everything they wear is dripping in logos, and I just don't give a fuck, like and I'm fine if they like, I don't care. It's just not the way that I show up, but it becomes almost overbearing how much they care about it, even though they may or may not have the money. I don't know. And so I think part of it is like identifying, and you could tell me if I'm wrong about this, but like, how do you feel around them? How do you feel in their presence? I don't know if that has anything to do with it, or how do you identify those people that are going to serve you better when it is like, because I think what's so groundbreaking about what you do and the way you do it is that it really is just a mindset. It's a mindset shift that you can literally think your way to rich, right? Because it is a shift in that. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah. So in our book, we say a lot of really bad things about poor people. And one of our chapters is get rid of your poor friends if you want to get rich. And we do define what I mean by that, though. So broke is you have no money. And people think that's poor. That's not poor in my book. I know a lot of broke people who are, I can actually tell in 5 minutes that they're going to be millionaires. Like, to me, that's not a poor person. That's somebody who's currently broke. A poor mindset, though, can keep you broke forever. And not only that, your kids and your grandkids, because you're going to be passing them down. And a poor mindset, quite frankly, is just somebody who doesn't get it. They just don't know the truth about how people get rich and how rich people invest and how rich people spend their money. And I didn't know any of this. I grew up poor. I grew up broke, but I've studied it. So it's not just me observing things. And I work with a bunch of ultra wealthy people now as their financial advisors. So I know exactly how they invest because I'm doing their investments for them. But I've also studied the psychology of hundreds and hundreds of ultra wealthy people. And I got to tell you, like, it just, what I learned blew me away because I did not know this was the case. So I'll give you a quick example. We looked at a group of people who had $11 million in net worth. Now, to me, you're doing pretty good. You might even use the word rich if you have $11 million in net worth. I think you're rich. And we compared them to a group of people that had $500,000 in net worth. Now, you're doing pretty good with $500,000 in net worth. That is an upper middle class sort of experience. But we compared those two groups of people, and we asked them how much money they spent on their last house, vacation, watch, and car. And we actually asked for dollar amounts. And what blew me away, and by the way, I was really shocked by this, is that that group of people that had almost 20 times the net worth only spent twice as much on those things.
Whoa.
Yeah, so you would expect it to be 20 times as much.
Their spending is not in perpetuity to their earning.
No, not at all. They were spending about twice as much for a house, twice as much for a car, less than twice as much for a watch, by the way. They were only averaging about $1,000 for a watch, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's like, whoa, what does that tell you about what most rich people are doing? And the problem is we're just being lied to on social media. And by the way, I worked with a lot of entertainers and actors and sports personalities. And you hear stories about it all the time, that they just they get money and then it melts away. They overspend it. They mismanage it. Yeah. And that is kind of the common thing. That's usually what happens when you're seeing somebody spending lavishly online. Then to me, it's a huge indicator. Like when you see labels, when other people see people with labels, they might start to feel a little bit of low self-esteem, a little bit of shame. I got to tell you, I think the exact opposite. Because I've studied all of this, I'm thinking, oh my God, they have low self-esteem and they probably have a lot of debt. And I've lived in poor areas. I've lived in middle-class areas. I live in a very wealthy area now in Boulder, Colorado. And what I've noticed is the logos shrink the richer people are until you can't even see them. And
they call it stealth wealth.
Yes. Well, you don't have any reason. Why would you want to wear a logo showing that you've made it? You have no reason. You don't need to impress anybody. You don't have low self-esteem about it. I mean, think about it. People have to wrap their head around this. So, because I just feel like And I get so upset by it and passionate about it. And so I sort of like jokingly disparage people who have outward displays of wealth. And by the way, I'll say this, I've done it myself. I grew up low income. I thought that's what rich people did. I got out of grad school. I owed $100,000 of student loan debt. I went and bought a $2,000 luxury watch. I bought my mom a thick gold bracelet so she could show. And I didn't think about this, but this is why I did it. I wanted, obviously, to show my mom I loved her. There's lots of ways to do that. I could have written a note,
Yeah.
but I wanted her to be able to show her friends, because she'd, oh, look, my Bradley,
My
he's a
son
doctor
made it.
now. He's made it. Look what he
Yeah.
did for me. I thought that's what wealthy people did because I was being lied to also, and that's just not what they do. And so it's just really important to know that whether you decide to do it or not, it's a good idea to know what actually people are doing who actually have high net worth.
But I think we need to talk about the social media thing. What I think is so interesting about you specifically and Adrian, your partner, is that you guys have really strategically targeted your messaging on TikTok because from what I can tell, you guys are really passionate about helping younger people learn this early and not fall into the trap later in life. And what is interesting and what I'd be curious to know, like, what are the lies that are common beliefs on social media that some of these reels and TikTok and videos and stuff are really seductive and they sound exciting and people are convicted and they look good and they're portraying the life. Like, what are the lies that we are believing?
Yeah, so I know an influencer, and I'm not going to name names, but
You can name names here.
No, I won't. But she like every video is her in this like brand new, like incredible outfit, and what I know is that she goes and returns it all, so she buys it, creates a video, and then returns it because she can't afford it. Okay.
Yeah.
And you got to think about who are these people on social media constantly displaying these outward displays of wealth. What's the game, And a lot of times they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you a course, or they're trying to sell you. They do what advertisers do. They make you feel bad about yourself, so you go buy whatever it is they're trying to sell. So you have to understand that you're being manipulated. That's the first thing. The second thing is you got to understand how rich people spend and how they invest, which I hopefully have shared with you. Like, whoa, because you can all. People look for examples to confirm their bias. It's like, no, that's not true. And really, it's because they think that buying this stuff is going to actually make them happier. And it's not going to. And then there's all sorts of other myths that keep people stuck. So one that I find fascinating is that, in order to become wealthy, you have to become an entrepreneur. Now, there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur, but I became a millionaire when I was still working in the public school system. And studies show that 7 out of 10 millionaires are employees and professionals. They're not business owners. 7 out of 10. And what they do is they fund their 401k. And I mean, man, I've got so many examples of this. You can work at McDonald's your whole life and be a millionaire at retirement. It's really not that complicated. And I've run the stats. I've run the numbers with low income kids I've worked with. I worked with low income kids for 20 years. And so to your point too, like this book is the manual I wish I had when I was young and didn't know what I was doing when it came to money. And when I say young, I mean all the way up into my 30s, I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't have a mentor and I didn't have a role model. And so it's all these like beliefs around money and rich people that really hurt people. So you want to be an entrepreneur, that's great. Just understand this: most businesses fail, and so your business is probably going to fail. It's okay. You can get back on the horse and try again. But most are employees and professionals. Most went to public school. Very few of them actually inherited their wealth. It's like it's around 80% of millionaires in the United States are self-made. Okay.
That's shocking.
Yeah, it's shocking because I didn't know that. I didn't think that was true. And I'm not trying to sell anything other than my book. So please buy my book, but I'm not trying to sell anything here. Like whatever the truth is, I'd be telling you what it is. The other thing that I see on social media all the time is that, college isn't worth it anymore. And, sure, I'm a professor, but I don't really care. It's a side hustle. But I look at something like that, and I try to be open-minded. Being wealthy and being successful, you have to have an open mind. I'm like, oh, is that true? Is college no longer worth it anymore? Let me go look. It doesn't take you long to find out that the average college grad right now, and by the way, they do this research every year, and they say how much money are you making each week. They make at least 1.2 million more dollars during their lifetime.
Yeah.
So, statistically speaking, college is absolutely worth it. Now, we do in that chapter give you the 10 worst majors that make less than minimum wage. So, if you don't get the right
Yeah.
major, college is absolutely not worth it. And not only that,
Uh-huh.
it can keep you broke.
I saw that
So,
with my liberal arts degree.
yes, unfortunately, and it's the degrees that are the
Right.
best for society somehow that don't
Right.
get,
Right.
because they're more fun, right?
Yeah.
I've also heard things like, marriage isn't worth it anymore. And I always go, look, I'm like, oh, is that true? And there's this whole there's this black hole male, like I would say it's sort of like toxic male part of the internet. And they'll talk about how, marriage is a scam and women take all your money and they keep you broke and all this. And I'm like, oh, is that true? And I just go research, and it's like the average married person between the ages of 25 and 35, 10x the net worth as a single person in the same age category. And there's lots of reasons for that. But these are the types of things that I see on social media all the time that, they're just not true in general, And so I always find that fascinating. Like, what's the message we're putting out to young people? And is it actually true? Because, and you got to go with sort of general stats, because for any individual person, college may not be worth it, but as a whole, it is.
Right.
So I get
Yeah.
really upset when I see people lying to an entire generation.
Well, I think and again, a lot of it is like shocking, right? Like, how can you shock people into something? What I think is, what I want to circle back to, you had talked about working a corporate job. And one of the things that blew me out of the water is your chapter, People Who Binge Netflix Without a Side Hustle Will Be Poor Forever. And you guys, your calculations on this was like, because I know that there are people listening who are working a corporate job and they're like, how can I make this work? How can I be in a place? So can you help reframe our Netflix addiction?
Yeah, so I got to give credit to my co-author Adrian for this. Like, Adrian is the side hustle king. You should have him on your podcast at some point. He made $1.7 million 1 year while living in a van, which by the way is just fabulous, like visual.
It is.
And he saved and invested 95% of his income in that year, which is amazing. But what he did is he looked at the top Netflix series, added up the number of hours, and then attached it to a side hustle where if you just invested your time in that side hustle, you could be making an extra $1,500 a month, like pretty easily. And I love my relationship with Adrian. He's the son of Mexican immigrants. He's self-made from the ground up. His parents came from extreme poverty. I mean, I just love the hustle that his parents had. It's so inspiring. I also say that you can't compete with an immigrant, because the richest people I know are immigrants, which is, to me, is just like a huge wake up call. It's like, my family's been here for generations and we're poor. And then somebody, gets off a plane or off a boat. They don't speak the language. They have every systemic barrier stuck in front of them and they go to multimillionaire status. It's like, what's going on here? There's a mindset, there's a behavior pattern. So I sort of become obsessed with, trying to understand the psychology and behaviors of those types of people. So, and just to illustrate the point, my son, I've got an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. My 11-year-old's like, I want a job, Dad. And we're like, geez, dude, school's your job. And he's like, no, I want to make money. I want to invest. I'm not sure where he got that idea. But I'm like, okay. So I go to Adrian. I'm like, what sort of side hustle could we do? He wanted to do a lemonade stand. And I don't want to guilt trip the neighbors into giving him their money. And so he told me about this Amazon product review thing, and which, by the way, I told my son about. So my 11-year-old now reviews products. He researches them. He comes up with a shot list. He helps videotape them. He edits the videos. At the end of the day, I was like, at least he's going to learn a skill. This month, he's going to make $5,000 from it.
Wow.
Yeah,
11 years old.
11 years old.
I have an 11-year-old. I need to put him to work as soon as he gets home today.
Yeah, get him to work.
Wow. Well, I think it's so interesting because I think you guys almost have a formula for like side hustles that you can consider that may be different, that if you reappropriated that time that you would be spending on Netflix into a side hustle, it could really help you out with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if your goal is to increase your income, like we also have a chapter that's called, I'm looking at it here. It's get a roommate, get on the bus, get sober, get bald, and get a side hustle or shut up about being broke. And what we so there's two different routes to this. One is to cut expenses, which by the way is not a pleasant emotional experience, Allison.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to do it, and what we looked is the average amount that Americans spend on rent, on cars, on alcohol, and on going to the salon. And we said, well, if you got a roommate, you cut your rent in half. And if you did all those things in 25 years, and if you invested the rest, you'd have an extra $2.8 million. And that's just by average expenditures in the United States. $2.8 million. That's the type of thing that that many immigrants will do that people who grow up in the United States would just never do. Oh, a roommate? No, I need my own space. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to learn how to cut my hair, on YouTube. I need to go spend this, and I can't give up my alcohol, and I can't give up my car. So the bottom line is there are multiple ways to get here. The average American could get there just by doing those things. But I like the idea of increasing your income. But the key is that you have to have this rich mindset first. So the rich mindset is this: when a dollar comes into my life, I am going to save and invest a percentage of it every single dollar. And by the way, that is going to be the first thing I do. So for me, I always shot for 30% of my income. Boom. I'm going to save it, invest it. I'm not going to touch it. That's my financial freedom fund. That is the mindset that you can work fast food your whole life and be a millionaire at retirement. And that's the mindset that we are trying to instill in all our viewers on TikTok and Instagram, and trying to catch as many people as early as we can.
Yeah. And I think what is so interesting is it really does reframe what wealth is for you, or what money does mean to you, and like unhooking yourself from those generational stories, right? And so where does somebody begin with this when they acknowledge, I'm money avoidant, I'm a money status person? How does somebody start to unhook themselves?
Yeah. So the first thought is, if you just have that awareness and you get it, boom, light bulb goes on. You just heard me say you should invest, a percentage of your income, and then you immediately start doing it. You're great. And I'm not worried about you. You're going to be fine. You're going to learn what you need to learn along the way. But a lot of us, we know it, but we just can't do it. We know better, but we can't do better. And that's where I think it really helps to do a deeper dive into your psychology. Like, so you're aware that you have these beliefs around money. Where did they come from? Like, go interview your parents if they're alive. Go interview aunts and uncles or siblings. Find those family stories that have set you up to have the relationship with money that you're having right now. And part of it is adopting an internal locus of control, which we talk about a lot in the book.
Because I think that's real. Yeah, you do. Can you talk about the internal locus control, the external locus of control? I did look up what locus meant.
Yeah, so locus is sort of like, is it Latin or whatever for location? So locus of control is, where is the location of control in your life? And there's two different types. There's an internal locus of control, and there's an external locus of control. An internal locus of control looks at, for example, when I get home today, my wife may be grouchy and she may snap at me. And I got to tell you, Allison, I'm a wonderful guy. I'm a great husband. Why is she mad at me? And external locus of control will look at that conflict and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's like this. She's so ungrateful. I do all this. Look at her. I'm a victim. Look how she's victimizing me with this attitude. And internal locus of control goes, I wonder what I could do to make my relationship better. So clearly she's not in a good mood. I wonder if perhaps I haven't really set the stage. Maybe she doesn't really understand how much I love her and appreciate her. And maybe I need to do a better job of expressing that. Maybe I am not following through on what I know, like her love language. Like, she likes to spend time with me. Did I take the initiative this week to ask her out to lunch, a lunch date? Am I just expecting her to show up for me without showing up for her? That's an internal locus of control. It'll make you, first of all, my wife loves it when I blame myself for her bad mood. But I love it too, because I can actually do something about it. Same thing if I have a failed business, internal locus of control. Where did I go wrong? Now, and even if my partner stole all my money, My business partner, it's all his fault. Well, were there any red flags? What did I miss? Was his promises of riches, did I get seduced by that when they seemed unreasonable in retrospect? Always be looking for how you can pin it on yourself. And sometimes I say blame it on yourself. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about trying to take responsibility for as much as you can, because therein lies your power to change and make the life you want. That's really the key. Internal locus control associated with being wealthier, making more money, better outcomes in school, better outcomes in relationships, success across the board. And so if there's one rich mindset that I want to pass on to my kids, it is that internal locus of control.
And I think in the context of the book and kind of getting back to the finances conversation is a lot of people will think it's my employer's fault that I make this. It's the government's fault that is keeping it. It is everybody else's fault. So I think that is it, right? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we have a bunch of chapters that sort of talk about this, like your political party doesn't give a shit about you. That's a way to leave your control outside of you. Like, well, once the government changes and things become fair, quote, fair, then I'll be able to move ahead. We even talk about capitalism and we're like, hey, look, that's the system we're in. We're not even taking a stand on it. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Whatever. You can have opinions. You can throw data. But I'd be writing a book on how to thrive and survive in communism if that's the country I lived in, because it's about like, here's where you are. So, and things aren't fair, and there's all sorts of barriers, and life isn't fair, and not to diminish any of that, but it's like, what do you need to do after that? Like my best friends in life are the ones where if I did complain about my job or about whatever, that my friends would be like, oh, Brad, that sucks. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Those are my friends. And we're trying to be that friend for the reader here, where we recognize that, but what are you going to do about it? Like we have, oh, go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking about a couple of things. So like the first thing is acknowledge where it came from. You acknowledge your generational inheritance, right? Of those beliefs. Then you take your locus of control. You're taking your power back. From that responsibility, how do you overcome the shame that might come with, I made some mistakes around money, and then be able to move forward?
Yeah. So I'm going to try to cure your shame right now. Okay. So we're not going to talk theoretical. So it's like, of course you're a total idiot when it comes to money. Did anyone teach you? Like, I know you know how to do simple addition. So who taught you how to invest? Who taught you that the very first dollar bill you got for a birthday present that you should have invested 30% of it? Who taught you that? Did anyone teach you that?
No.
Who taught you that you are going to be 100% responsible for your financial freedom in life? It's 100% on you. I was told there's Social Security. Our grandparents' generation was told that there's going to be a pension. All that's gone. Like, you were never told these things. And not only that, maybe you grew up in an environment where you didn't have a mentor. You didn't have anyone who actually knew how to do any of these things. All of a sudden, credit cards come in the mail to you, and you take one out. Did anyone train you on how to use that credit card? You have to go get training to get a driver's license. Did anyone train you on a credit? These things are very complicated. Of course, you're a hot mess. Of course, you screwed up. Welcome to the club. The average American is a total mess when it comes to money. If you
Right.
if you have not screwed up, you're the weird one. How are you feeling about your shame now? Did that work at all?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
And again, I think part of it is like, then where? And so I think identifying, and what I like about your book is that it really, really takes a compassionate view and an understanding view of where did this come from, that of course you're not going to be, like, I think the book really does a good job of explaining it and then identifying where do you go from here. So I would love to know, Dr. Brad, what do you know that you wish other people could know?
Well, I feel like we've been talking a lot about it, but the one thing that I would wish that people could do in terms of taking action is to start investing like right now. like today, $1. Like if you can do what it takes to invest $1, you are, I'm convinced you're going to be successful, because that's the hardest part, is investing $1. Like you're going to have to go open up an account somewhere. I like Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, by the way. If you're taking notes, you're going to have to link your bank account to that. You're going to have to take a risk tolerance questionnaire. What kind of investor are you? You're going to have to open up something like a Roth IRA. You're going to have to pick a fund inside that Roth IRA. The SEC, by the way, for do-it-yourselfers, they talk about target date funds. I'm not giving you financial advice. It's just a great way to get started on your own. You're going to have to do that work. And then all you have to do is look to invest more. So the goal is start with 1%, try to get it up to 10, try to get it up to 20, try to get it up to 30. It really comes down to how wealthy you want to be and how fast you want to be wealthy. But literally that is what will take you from broke to financial freedom. And it starts with $1.
I love it. How do people find your book, Dr. Brad?
So it's available in all bookstores. Pre-order now, and it's coming out on the 29th. But we will have some special offers for listeners of your podcast at startthinkingrich.com/late learner. We'll have some giveaways on there. We've got a masterclass that we're putting together. So there'll be lots of goodies for your listeners as a token of appreciation for you having me here and us having this discussion.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Brad. This is so helpful, and I will link everything in the show notes. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your work.
Thanks for having me.
This was such an eye-opening episode. Big thank you to Dr. Brad Klontz, and go make sure you grab his new book, Start Thinking Rich. Late Learner listeners can get a special giveaway by going to startthinkingrich.com/late learner, and I've linked all of his info in the show notes. And as for you, what is your next move? Sign up for my free weekly newsletter called Reinvention Roadmap, if you haven't already, at allisonhair.com/email. Or if you want somebody in your corner with you, helping you make the big shift really real for you, book a free strategy call with me at allisonhair.com/schedule, and let's see what we can do together. As always, thank you so much for listening and being part of the great reinvention that we are all living through. If I don't see you on the socials where I normally hang out, I'll see you next week right here on Late Learner Podcast.